it play and call it work.
Hi there, and welcome to this week's Sit and Talk with me, Kris. Next week will be Matt, so for any comments for next week's Sit and Talk, leave them for @Matt. And of course, if you respond to anything I've said in this video today, leave it in this video @Kris. And yeah, we'll answer them, I guess, at some point. Who knows? But for next week, yeah, it's Matt. Normally it's Steve, but Steve's going away, taking a vacation, and so it'll be Matt. And so let's get to the questions. The first one is Wargrin. Kris, where's the Swedish Chef content? Do it, or you'll be haunted by Nurgle bums. The Swedish Chef content, it'll get done at some point. Gotta get the costume, you know? And, you know, finding a chef hat is just, I mean, see, the problem is I've got a big bulbous head, and hats just don't fit me. And so, you know, those chef hats, they're pretty darn big, but you got to find one that fits like this big old cranium of mine, and that's not an easy task. It's not easy. Again, like I said, this thing is like, it's like basketball size, and it's round. It's not like, you know, a human head is kind of oval shaped, kind of like maybe egg shaped, eggheadish, but this is bulbous, and yeah, you know, it's kind of like Planet of the Apes. You know, those the humans, and they can see the veins, and then they're like boop 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 boop, and they can do like. I'm rambling now. Cortan86. Kris, I'm going to be starting up painting an orc army for a narrative campaign. They're going to be from a volcanic death world and have orange skin. What color palette would you suggest to pull off these orange lava orcs? Well, the orcs, he wants to have them with an orange skin, which would be fairly interesting, right? You can do the shading in orange, so they still have a bit of a green to them, but you can have orange in the recesses, and that would give you some really kind of interesting colors at play, if you know what I mean. Some people use reds to create shadows and such on orcs, and if you went with, say, kind of a darker, I suppose, green, and had orange as your color in the shadows, or if you went for a more pale kind of green, although that wouldn't probably work. If you went with orange, straight up orange on the skin, you could throw green into the recesses and shade with green, which would give you some interesting color variation, and also throw in almost like your say highlights on the flesh. I would go with like a slightly lighter orange, or even almost a yellow, and kind of like stipple the highlights onto the flesh, and that would give them kind of a craggy kind of appearance, kind of a rocky, volcanic kind of look, and that actually might be more interesting. So if you took, say, for example, you took, you know, Troll Slayer orange, or Fire Dragon Bright as the base tone, or yeah, something like that as the base color, and then shaded with at least, you know, something like maybe Caliban green. That might be a little bit too dark, but it might give you some nice deep shadows, and then you know, you let them kind of blend. Like, basically, you're gonna take the Caliban green and you're gonna break it down into a shade wash. And usually, one of the best ways to do that is a little bit on your palette, a heavy helping of Lemaine Medium, and I definitely would recommend using Liquitex Flow Aid. If you've been watching a lot of quick tips lately, you'll see that I sometimes use that to break a color down into a glaze or into a shade wash. And I'll shade the model in that color. And what that Liquitex Flow Aid does is it allows the surface tension of the shade to act just like the GW shade washes, where they creep into the recesses and stuff. It'll do the exact same thing, and it'll leave the overall surface just tinted slightly, but it'll fall within the cracks. And so if you did that with the Caliban green on top of that orange, yeah, it'd probably look pretty interesting. And then if you stippled just like a bit of yellow or light orange on top of that, you know, just kind of give them just like that kind of craggy, broken kind of like appearance like that. I think that would be kind of interesting. And then, of course, the clothing itself, I would go with like darker colors, dark grays, dark black, really dark browns, kind of scorched kind of stuff, you know, like stay, because I mean the flesh is going to be so bright that you'll want the cloth and stuff to be fairly darker and subdued. But otherwise, yeah, that'd be fairly interesting. really, that's pretty much your color palette right there. I mean, if you went with orange, like if you wanted to have the flesh orange, yeah, I would shade with greens. I wouldn't shade with reds or anything like that, as it's just a little, they'll look too fiery at that point, whereas you want to still kind of keep that orkiness feeling to them. And so I'd shade wash with that darker green like that. It'd still give you your shadows and stuff, but it'll still throw that hint of green into there. And then also the green and orange will kind of blend together and give you something far more interesting as well, which is what we all want to do. We all want to have interesting looking models, and so yeah, give it a shot, and send me some pictures of what you did, because I'd like to see that. Oh, that's not for me, not for me, not for me, not for me, not for me. Holy man. Daniel F95. Kris, I hope you are well. First of all, I would like to thank you for all of the content. It has massively increased my confidence and knowledge of our hobby. Secondly, I struggle to stick to and paint one 40k and Age of Sigmar army, constantly jumping between. Well, all of them, do you have this issue, or do you have any advice on how to deal with it? Thank you. Jumping between them, well, I mean, you kind of want to jump where your inspiration's flowing, right? Like you're really into something in 40k, and you start painting a bit, and you kind of get a little bit bored, and then all of a sudden Age of Sigmar comes up with something. Oh yeah, jump to that. Or maybe you've got two armies on the go, and maybe you're methodically trying to work through them. So the best way I often recommend people getting through their armies is do a squad, and then do a vehicle. And then do a squad, and then do a character, and then do a squad, and then do a vehicle. And you kind of go back and forth between your squads and your auxiliary units, right? So you kind of keep going back and forth. Got to do a squad, do a rhino. Do a squad, do a land raider. And the same thing can kind of work for the Age of Sigmar stuff, although there's not really big war machines in Age of Sigmar. So, if you were working on your fire slayers or fire seekers or whatever, and you did up one of the units of the little duders, little dwarves, and then did the dragon, then did some more little duders, and then did your general, and then did some more duders and did another dragon, and you kind of go back and forth like that, and kind of break the work up, and that way, it's not feeling so monotonous, because that's really what it is. It's the feeling that it's getting really monotonous. And of course, and I always recommend this for everybody who has a lot of projects on the go, is in your work area, do not have those projects in front of you, because it's just gonna bum you out. You're just gonna see all this stuff, and I gotta get this done, I gotta get this done, I gotta get this done. It's gonna bum you out. So clear all that out. Have one or two projects in front of you, and then just work with that, and try to finish and try and get to it, and try and stick to it. And of course, it's all personal drive as well, and as well as what kind of time we have, and if we've got real life, we've got school, family, whatever, those come first, of course, and so. But yeah, don't have so many projects in front of you as well. Flip mode. What a name. Flip mode SH at Kris. Have just started painting last tried 20 years ago. Your tips have been an excellent help. One small clarification: if you're specifically doing wet blending, is each coat left to dry in your quick tip videos? If you're working on a single character model, do you have a few on the go at the same time so that you can switch whilst one is drying? When I'm wet blending, it all depends. I mean, if you're wet blending using like a two-brush method, either to two-brush blend the colors, or if you're doing it to feather the color. I've shown those a couple examples in other videos. Those are done fairly quickly, and you got to kind of act fast to do those. If you're two-brush blending and you're using a retardant, then you often have a lot of time on your hands. I don't often use retardant too often, unless of course I'm going to blend something a larger surface. I find that's really what I want to have, more work time. So vehicles and say Terminators and Dreadnoughts, even Space Marines I suppose too, because if you really want to get that blend down. So, or any size model really. When you're using retardant, you can, it's just really like when you're starting to get used to blending, that's when it really helps to have that extra time to really kind of see how the colors play together. And so yeah, but when you're just going to go straight on 2-brush blend something where you're just going to lay the color down real quick and then lay another color down and blend them really fast, there's no retardant needed. It's just a bit of dampness of the brush, or maybe a little bit of Lamaine medium or something like that, and then it's just a quick little blend, and then you leave it, and then you're done with it. I do a lot of those, not a lot with the retardant. But otherwise, no, I don't do them for single. Whenever I'm working on a single character, I'm only ever working on a single character. So oftentimes there is a lot of downtime between things. I don't do a lot of assembly line where I'll have a bunch of characters on the go or anything like that. Yeah, but to answer your question, when I'm doing wet blending, am I letting the coat dry? Each coat dry? No. Unless, of course, I'm doing a blend where I'm feathering the color. So say, for example, I've laid out Mephiston red, and then I'm taking Wild Rider red. And the Mephiston red will be dry, but then I'll take the Wild Rider red, and I'll lay a little bit down, and then I'll take a damp brush, and I'll feather off the one like where the color's going to fade off, and then allow that to dry. And when you're doing 2-brush blending without retardant, yeah, you're just laying the color down wet, and then the other color's wet, and you blend them really fast, right? When you're retardant, the same thing. Color's wet, and they're both, that's why it's called wet blending, because the colors are wet still when you're blending them together. Feathering is really kind of like, is more akin to, layering or glazing, and then of course then you have the dry brushing, which is, it's just a dry brush, right? And it lays the color down right on top, and it just sits on top of the high points, So, yeah, to answer your question, no, I do not let the colors dry when I'm wet blending. So hopefully that helps. If that's not quite what you were looking for, or quite exactly what you were asking about, feel free to leave a little bit of a clarification again. I'll answer it again as best as I can. M. Tempest, Kris, you have your comfy chair in roaring fire. Now you need a quirk to give you a foot rub. We know it's part of his job description. You can summon him by shouting Beverly. Thanks for all the great content. Shouting Beverly, really? I really don't. I don't really know how to. It's not a question there. Really, it was more of just a bit of advice. I'm sorry. It's kind of funny though. You can imagine just sitting here, reading these questions, getting a foot rub or getting a shoulder rub. Ken Bomb 11. Kris, would you possibly know what it is that Lee used for his basing material? If not, could you ask him? Much appreciated. For his basing material for what? For like any particular models or all his models? Because for a lot of his models, I know he uses cork, but otherwise, I don't know. And he's not a boat, and his office is down in the dungeon, so I'm not going to go screaming all the way down to the dungeon to ask him. M. Tempest, Kris, I'm not sure if I missed why, but how come you're not going to Valhalla? Something else came up, and so I'm just not going to be able to attend this year. And again, I'd like to thank Miranda for inviting me, and hopefully, there'll be a spot maybe next year. So who knows? Daka Daka Boom Boom, Kris, Hersky Bursky Durbro. Hersky Bursky Durbro. Hersky Bursky Durbro?
Can you say it like the Swedish Chef?
It's a traditional Swedish greeting.
We'll try to Swedish Chef it up.
Hersky Dursky Durbro. That's it. I'm saying it. It's exactly as it's written. What are you talking?
Enthusiasm that time.
I'll give you enthusiasm. How's it going, mate? And did you get my emails? Had to send a few because the attachments were too big at the time I tried, so I chopped them into manageable lumps for you. I did get the emails. When I finally make it over there for a visit, may I do battle with you? Maybe over a cold one. I mean, a beer, not a dead body. You sicko. Cheers, dude. Yeah, of course. You make it over here, yeah. Definitely, man. Definitely. Hersky Bursky der bro. Hersky, or is it Hershky? Hersky Bursky? I don't know. It's all Swedish to me. Where are we here? Elo Harand? Hey Chris, I've been thinking for a while about getting an airbrush to broaden my painting horizons. I was wondering which one do you use, and would you recommend it to someone brand new to airbrushes? Also, what advice would you give someone for using maintenance of airbrushes? Thanks, your painting videos are awesome. By the way, keep it up. Okay, so Elo, I'm just gonna say Elo, right? I've been using I've only been using airbrushes a couple years now. I wouldn't consider myself a master of them by any stretch. There is a lot to know, and there is a lot of maintenance that goes into your airbrushes. I personally use Badger's Patriot 105. It's a good utility brush. It does priming, base coating, and can lay out some of your initial highlights as well. It can get into real close spaces, turn the air pressure down, you can get in nice and close, and do some smaller stuff as well. They do offer smaller needle brushes as well for doing really fine detail kind of stuff. But as long as you take care of these brushes, they're gonna last a while. Like this brush I've been using for I don't know how many years now, and I mean it's still good quality. My well is nice and clean. Let me see, get a shot of that. Get some more light in there. There, you see, nice and clean. Keep it nice and clean. As I always say, take care of your brushes. And so, again, even with your airbrushes, you take care of your airbrush. It'll be good. But yeah, I definitely would recommend it. I mean, I've not used Iwata's or there's a couple other brands out there. I've never not used any of theirs. I've only ever used the Patriot or the Badger. But I like it, and I imagine for the most part, airbrushes are airbrushes. I don't think there's a whole lot of difference between, a lot of airbrushes other than size of needles. And like here, let me see if I can grab my other one here. This one here is the Renegade Chrome. This one's a fine detail one. You can see it's got a smaller well. And of course, when I pull off the front end here, it's got a much finer needle on the front. But otherwise, this one operates pretty much the same way. Just, smaller needle, less air pressure, come in nice and close. You draw lines with these and, stuff like that. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, I would recommend them, definitely. A Badger, yeah. I mean, it's as long as you clean it and it works great. Take care of the needles, make sure that everything runs nice and smooth inside. Definitely would recommend picking up an ultrasonic cleaner just to give it a bath every once in a while, after some intense painting, just to help, shake off any of the extra little crud that does build up. But otherwise, just, regular flushing and, cleaning the paint out. Just keep flushing. When you flush paint, make sure you get it all out. Yeah, you just got to take care of it. There is a lot of work in maintaining your airbrush, as I mentioned before. Knowing its parts and taking it apart and knowing how to put it back together, so that everything goes back properly and fits just like how you bought it. There is a lot of that, so there is a bit of learning, right? Whereas a regular bristle brush, you just rinse it off, put it down, get the brush soap, take care of it, clean it after a painting session. But otherwise, it's roughly low maintenance for a regular bristle brush. Whereas Airbrush, yeah, it can get into high maintenance. Knowing how to take your brush apart and, you know, also what chemicals or what solutions you should be using to clean your brush. Nothing too abrasive or acidic or anything like that, because you can pull that chrome plate right off the metal, because it's just a nickel or a chrome. I think it's a nickel or something. But you can pull that right off with some chemical solutions, like acetone. I know will eventually pull that off. So things like that to be mindful of. All sorts of stuff. But yeah, any advice? Just learn. If you're gonna get an airbrush, your first airbrush, the Badger Patriot 105. They also have a new one, I think, called the Extreme, which I haven't played with yet, but this one here has served me well since I started doing airbrushing, I think 4 years. So 4 years I've had this brush, kept it clean, in working order, and it still serves me great. So again, you take care of them, they'll last you a long time. And so yeah, I would recommend it. Definitely would recommend it. Again, I mean, if it's easier for you in your local area to get a hold of, say, a Wada or something like that, then feel free. Check out which ones they're considered their more utility brush. I really can't speak to what kind of brushes like are equivalent to each other. I'm not entirely sure. Again, I'm not really, buying a whole bunch of airbrushes and seeing, like what does what, and I just want to get the work done. And so I just use what's on hand, and Badger's kind enough to send us a bunch of brushes, and so we use them. Where am I? Mail in at Kris. Kris doing a sit and talk. Burst through the wall. Oh yeah! That's an old bit from way back. Some of you Vault members might remember that one, but yeah. And some of you guys might not even remember from before, but yeah, if you go back in some old videos like 2-3 years ago, yeah, you'll know what I'm talking about. Oh yeah. You have to go searching. And the first person to write the video name down gets a prize. What's the prize? I have no idea. My admiration. I know, pretty crap prize, right? Sin cities only. Good. Insert correct time of day here. Kris. Oh no, your skin has turned green and you started stalking. I started talking in a funny accent. Now that you are an orc, what do you call your warband and what are you going to do with them? Cheers from Vegas. My skin turns green and I start talking with a funny accent. No, that's not really orky, is it? It's more of a thuggish kind of voice. Can't really do an orc accent. What would I call my warband? My warband would be, I don't know, warband of the punchy fist. I don't know. No. Oh, here we go. The warband of the bloody sun. There we go. Not sun like sun, S-O-N, S-U-N. And what are you going to do with them? We are going to... with orcs, I've always been partial to either bad moons or evil suns. And so I think it would be a bad moon, evil suns kind of army. So it'd be lots of speed and lots of gits. Lots of flash gits. Big guns. Just lots and lots of big guns. I think that'd be awesome. And it's too bad you can't do things like, if you're bad moons and you love the big guns, you can't slap them on your war bikes and have, like, instead of war bikes having regular guns, you can slap the big guns on the war bikes. And that's too crazy. It's too customizable, I suppose. Everybody's like, well, what kind of crazy combination is this thing? And you can't play a regular kind of game because everybody's like, I don't even know what your army does. That's craziness. And it would be crazy because orcs are crazy. Where are we? Daka Daka Boom Boom. Kris, Dude. Dude, I was just thinking. It hurt, but I did it anyway. You know when you're priming a model, what would happen if you primed black spraying upwards and primed white spraying downwards? Would it give the impression of lighting from above and do some work for you creating shadows and highlights? Thanks, Kris. For honor, for glory, for Leroy Jenkins. Yeah, exactly. And that's often what a lot of artists will do to help with the. It's often the beginnings of the pre-shading, or getting your started on your zenithal highlighting, right? So a lot of people, they'll get started. Okay, and you can do this with the colored primers, black and white primers as well. I would really be cautious of how much paint I was laying down, because again, primer can go on really heavy. And also, if your model has a lot of fine little details, like say for example, like Infinity models, you're gonna clog up those details and they're gonna be gone. But like Space Marine, stuff like that, where really don't have that much detail, you can probably get away with this, no problem. So anyway, you spray the entire model black. You spray everything black, not too heavily, but you got black even coverage all over the model. And then, okay, so he's on his base, right? He's on his base. And then so you turn it, and then you spray straight down at the model with the white, and boom, you have instant highlighting, zenithal highlighting on the model. Zenithal just means that the highlights are coming from one direction, okay? Now, often when we're talking about zenithal highlighting, we're talking about the lighting coming straight down the model. But that doesn't mean that's not, like, if it was like, say from a torch, the model's holding a torch, and you had that highlighting emanating from the torch, that's still zenithal highlighting. It's often called object source lighting, but it's still a zenithal highlight. It's just, So, yes, you can do it. A lot of people do it with Airbrush. Just to get started, they often will do a black, gray, white. But if you're doing the spray cans, yes, you can still do a black and white. I don't know if there's a lot of grays in the sprays. I don't know if Citadel produces a gray, unless they produce like the Space Wolf gray, which is kind of a blue gray. But yeah, I don't know if you really want to do that. But yeah, so it's entirely possible. Give it a shot. Just be cautious of laying too much primer down, because again, primer is a lot thicker than regular kind of paint, and so you run the risk of obscuring details. If your models are really fine detailed like Infinity, then you run the risk of laying too much primer down. Now, it's not so much when you're doing it with Airbrush, because Airbrush, the primer seems to go on just a little bit thinner than regular spray. And I noticed like GW spray white, if you're spraying it too far, it's too chalky. If you're too close, too high pressure, and it just kind of goes all over the place, and it just comes on just too thick. So again, you got to know how to prime your models really well. And usually that 30 centimeter or 1 foot distance from the model is the optimal range. And too far, it turns into dust. Too close, too much pressure on the model. They lay too much down into one little area. And so, yeah, you got to be careful. But you can do it. And if that sounds like something that might save you a bit of time or a bit of frustration or whatever. And also, you don't even have to do it with just black and white. You can do it with the color primers as well. You could do, say, for example, spray the model entirely black and then hit the top with, say, like a red. If you're doing like, dark and moody kind of blood angels, if you're doing Space Marines, and you just hit the top with just the red, and you have that red sitting on top and on the black, and it looks really cool. And by all means, it doesn't even have to be black. It could be red with white, white coming down, white zenithal, blue, You could even do it, say, there's a bazillion different directions. You could go blue and red, 2 different colors, go right on the same model, giving you 2 different impressions. Red coming from the bottom, maybe it's the lava base, right? And you want to have that light glowing from underneath. And blue is the armor, and it's coming down like that. There's a bazillion different directions you can always go with these spray kind of colors, and your imagination is really the only thing that's going to limit what you do. And so hopefully, daka daka boom boom, that helps, and maybe gives you a few ideas on what to do next. So I think that's it for this sit and talk. I think we'll be continuing on into the vault, and so again, a reminder: any responses to what I've said today, at Kris. And of course, next week will be Matt. And so leave your questions for Matt at Matt down below, and he'll get to them in the next Sit and Talk, because again, the cycle is normally Steve, but Steve is not going to be here next week to do this. So, yeah. So, and that's it. We're done. We're done. Yeah. So let's go over to the vault and, you know, let's answer a few more questions and have a bit more fun. And yeah, so I'll see you in the vault, and happy wargaming.